Today we're adding 3D texture to our animals. I'm going to use this paper to show you all the textures you can choose between, and then at the end I'll show you how I used it on my bird. Now you're going to want to use a glue bottle. So if you have a glue stick, you'll want to borrow a glue bottle from me today. So the first texture you could use is a feather. So feathers you would want to use for like a bird, something that has feathers. You can cut them shorter. You can layer them kind of on top of each other. So I'm going to put a dot of glue, dot, dot, not a lot. Put down my feather, and then I could do another dot slightly above it so that they slightly overlap. All right, let's look at some fluffy, soft options. So one option are these fluffy balls. The downside to these is you can't really cut them very well. If I do cut them, they start coming apart, which is kind of fine because we're gluing it down, but just be aware that's a bit of a struggle. So I'm gonna put a dot again and press that where I want it. Since I've cut this, it's a little bit harder. But this is really great for things that have fur, things that are fluffy. Another option for something that's fluffy or soft is yarn. This is really great for like a horse or a lion, something that has hair. I prefer to do like a line of glue rather than a dot for this, because then I can just kind of line this up on the line I drew and cut. Remember, none of these are fully going to be on until your glue dries. I have two options for things that are rough. The first is some rice. So I'm going to put a couple dots here, and then I'm going to line up some rice, making sure it gets some glue on it. Rice would also be good for something that is bumpy, because when you put them right up next to each other, they just feel kind of bumpy. The other option is to do some salt. So for salt, what I would do is like a dot of glue and then rub my finger around. So it's kind of like a glue stick, but it's going to be a little bit stronger. And then you're just going to sprinkle some salt on top. So this is almost more like sandy or something that is really rough. It's gonna feel a bit like sandpaper. The last option is something that's kind of stringy. This is also a good option for hair. This could be a good option for leaves, maybe even wood. This might be good for a line of glue as well, rather than a dot. It's kind of just like paper, but it's been folded, so there's like some texture to it. Things that are maybe lightly bumpy. So as I'm thinking what would be good for my bird, obviously feathers are probably a really good option for my bird. I could also consider my background. Maybe I do this stringy texture on the wood, but remember that I want to make sure I still see some simulated textures. So you can see this feather is really quite big. So that's something I would probably want to trim down. All right, so this is a good amount of real texture versus simulated texture.